Dinomorphia is the best deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, I'm just bland about that one. But seriously, Dinomorphia is actually a really good cheap deck. You can pretty much build this deck at about that $50 price range. But of course, if you spend a little bit more, you can make this deck even stronger. Today, we're going to be going over a Dinomorphia deck profile in July 2022 for this meta. And of course, we're going to be talking about how this deck can beat some of the next top contenders in Splight and Tier Elements. So in case you guys did not know, the Dinomorphia strategy is built on being able to fusion summon and pay life points. Starting off with the main deck, I play 3 copies of Dinomorphia Theresia. I also play 3 copies of Dinomorphia Domain and 3 copies of Dinomorphia Frenzy with 1 copy of Fossil Dig. Now, I thought that this was really odd at first, playing just 1 Fossil Dig, but then you start to realize a few problems with the Dinomorphia deck. When you play multiple copies of Fossil Dig, it actually becomes problematic because after you use your first Fossil Dig, the other Fossil Digs are literally just bricks. Like, you do not want those cards in your hand. More importantly, Theresia, while being a great card, isn't the most important card of the deck. Dinomorphia Frenzy and then Dinomorphia Domain would be the most important cards, as they allow you to be able to fusion summon from your deck. With that in mind, I decided to play 1 copy of Fossil Dig to be able to complete my 10 copies of the ability to be able to fusion summon, and then I actually decided to play 2 copies of Pot of Duality because this gives me the versatility to see 1 of my 10 cards, but also still the versatility in the later games to be able to see any of my other cards. Also, for quick maths, in case you guys did not know, a deck building theory I've been using for years, is that if you play 3 copies of a card and you have 1 card that interacts with that 3 copy of a card, then you only play 1 copy, so a 3-to-1 ratio. From there, if you're playing 5 copies of a card and then 2 cards that interact with those 5 cards, then you can play 2 copies of the interacting card. If you play 8 or more of a particular card, then you can play 3 copies of said interacting card inside of your deck. This helps you with preventing of bricking and also gives you that good ratio that allows you to be able to still consistently see your cards. Moving forward, though, we are going to move forward with the other Dinomorphia cards that don't necessarily help the strategy, but don't necessarily hurt the strategy at all. Dinomorphia Diplos is really important for the deck because a lot of times when you're fusion summoning, actually every time when you're fusion summoning, it's going to require Dinomorphia monsters in your deck. You don't want to use the monsters on your field because the ones in your deck are free. With that being said, Dinomorphia Diplos does allow you to send a Dinomorphia card from your deck to your graveyard, can burn 500, don't understand why that's there, and then just like Theresia, can special summon a Dinomorphia monster from the graveyard. The most important thing is that it is another Dinomorphia name that you can fuse with cards like Dinomorphia Domain or Dinomorphia Frizzy. I play 1 copy of Dinomorphia Sonic. I actually want to play multiple copies of this card. Not only does it stop cards like Forbidden Chalice or Forbidden Droplets and stuff like that, it also protects me from battle damage, one of the few Dinomorphia trap cards that actually does so. 1 copy of Dinomorphia Alert. This is easily a monster reborn to your side of the field. This card's kind of busted. And then 1 Dinomorphia Brute. This card is, I mean, it's good when you're destroying Dinomorphia cards that can summon themselves from the graveyard, right? And Dinomorphias pretty much do that. So it's a pretty decent card. I don't necessarily like that it requires you to destroy your Dinomorphia cards like the other ones, but I mean, it is what it is. It's a fair trade sometimes. That's it for the Dinomorphia support inside of the Dinomorphia deck. Now, if you guys did not know, this deck is a trap-based powerhouse. This deck is built to be able to submit your opponent to your trap cards. That way you can make the games as quickly as possible. For the trap cards, we are going to be running 3 copies of Solemn Strike, 3 copies of Gravedigger's Trap Hole. Now, there's actually a reason why I run these particular trap cards inside of the deck. Solemn Strike allows me to negate a monster effect activation, but if you guys haven't noticed, both Dinomorphia Domain and Frenzy pretty much say that I can fusion summon from the deck. They're Ash Blossom targets. With that in mind, I really wanted to skirt Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring as much as possible. And not only does Gravedigger's Trap Hole provide an excellent way to be able to stop hand traps like Ash Blossom, it's also fairly good against the Tier Element strategy that wants to use cards in the graveyard, in the Splight strategy, which does use cards from the hand and graveyard and banished as well. Followed up, of course, we play the God Spell card, 1 copy of Call by the Grave. It almost makes me wish that, whoa, Gravedigger's Trap Hole has the hand from Call by the Grave. I ain't noticed that. What? Yo, is that Grave Robber or is that Gravedigger's School? nigga's crazy. Anyways, Call by the Grave, of course, allows me to stop Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, and then also really important cards. Now, if you guys want to look at statistics, the most important hand traps in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are Infinite Impermanence and Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is just so versatile, allowing you to be able to negate just about anything that's really important. Think cards like Branded Fusion, and then think of a host of other cards that Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring can negate. And also, it's one of the most generic, great hand traps. If you guys want more logic or reasonings on why Ash Blossom is great, as well as where to hand trap your opponent, I just so happen to have a hand trap guide. Infinite Impermanence is a monster effect negator that can be activated in your draw phase, meaning that when your opponent uses cards to be able to special summon monsters or activate monster effects in the draw phase to dodge cards like Effect Failure, you can still use Infinite Impermanence. Now, of course, I understand that Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is a ridiculously expensive card, and to be honest with you, Infinite Impermanence isn't necessarily needed inside of the deck. If you guys want to keep this on your $50 budget, go ahead and drop all 6 of these cards. I'm just going to go ahead and set these to the side as just to remind me to talk about those particular cards. From here, we have 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. This card is a banger. I mean, it's a complete blowout of a Yu-Gi-Oh card in this particular strategy, because paying life points literally is a good thing. You want to be at 69 life points at all time, guys. Get to 69 life points. The next acceptable life point total is 420, guys. You'll win the game. Solemn Judgment actually helps us reduce our life point total while negating an opponent's pivotal card, giving our Dinomorphia fusion monsters a huge edge. And then, of course, there is a card that actually plays really well with paying half your life points. Only 2 copies of Ferret Flames. I thought that this card would be amazing at 3 because it forces your opponent to perform a certain action. So if a monster is unaffected by card effects, it doesn't matter. It's not affecting the monster, it's affecting the player. It can literally wipe your opponent's board. All you got to do is stay at 69 life points, guys. Just do it. 69 life points for me. Ferret Flames is actually an incredible Yu-Gi-Oh card. It actually made me start thinking about playing cards like Trap Trick inside of the deck, but then I realized that this deck plays nothing but traps and is ultra reliant. Then I thought about Lady Limits Lamets, but I need my normal summon for Theresia. So those were 2 ideas completely out of my mind. Now, lastly, there's 2 copies of Gozen Match and 2 copies of Rivalry of the Warlords here. I decided to go with 2 and 2 is because both Rivalry of the Warlords and Gozen Match are really good in certain matchups, but can be really bad in other matchups. But when you play them both together, they're like amazing in almost every single matchup in Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot of strategies in the current Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game cannot survive over those stipulations. You'll literally outright win the game because of these cards. And then now that we are done with the extra deck or the main board, let's talk about those 6 cards here. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring and Infinite Impermanence can be really, really expensive. But my strongest suggestion is actually to play another copy of Ferret Flames. This card would be really good and is pretty cheap. Then there is one of the most toxic things you can ever do to your opponent. You can play 3 copies of Summon Limit, which prevents the opponent from summoning multiple times, and seeing that this deck doesn't summon a ridiculous amount of times, you're actually fine. And then I would increase the glue eating by increasing Rivalry of the Warlords and Gozen Match to 3 apiece. So you don't necessarily need the hand traps, but Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is really special in this deck, and I'll be able to explain why as I go through the extra deck. Now, for the extra deck, guys, there's 3 copies of Dinomorphium Rexstrom. There's 3 copies of Kintragina. She's actually a very good-looking Yu-Gi-Oh card. That's all I'm going to say. There's 3 copies of Dinomorphia Stealth Bergia. I actually thought that Stealth Bergia was probably the most important card for the deck, but you don't summon it as often as you want. 1 copy of Unchained Abomination. This card is actually completely bonkers. The Dinomorphia deck destroys itself, which can trigger Unchained Abomination, but it's also a good Burgeon alternative. Dark the Dark Charmer allows you to special summon dark monsters from your opponent's graveyard, and saying that we play Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a lot of dark monsters like your opponent's Dark or a Nightmare Unicorn in your opponent's graveyard to special summon. Then 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Evil Sordoka, 1 Lagia, and 1 Psychic End Punisher. Psychic End Punisher outright wins games. There's really no discussion about this card. Imagine putting yourself at 69 life points while your opponent still has 8,000 and then summoning Psychic End Punisher. This is why we do not go into time. This is how we win games early. The problem with summoning Psychic End Punisher is that there's not great level 3 tuner monsters that kind of serve multi roles inside of this deck. But Ash Blossom and Joy Spring is a great card to negate your opponent, but also can follow up, plus your Rexstorm to be able to make Psychic and Punisher when you want to go for game. That's it for the main board and the side, or the main board and the extra deck. I have one combo, I guess, to show you how this deck works. Okay, guys, I really wish I can show you like a million combos with this deck, but I'm serious. This deck is literally as slow as me. It doesn't really do much. What you're going to do is go ahead and normal summon Dinomorphia Theresia, using its effect to be able to get Dinomorphia Frenzy from your deck to your hand. From there, you'll set the Dinomorphia Frenzy, and then on your opponent's main phase, you'll activate Dinomorphia Frenzy. I like to send Stealth Bergia from my extra deck to the graveyard, and then you'll also send from your deck to the graveyard a Dinomorphia Diplos if you already have Theresia. If you have a Diplos on the field, I'd probably send the Theresia. And from there, you'd be able to fusion summon into your Dinomorphia Kitragena. The reason why we summon Kitragena is because right now we're at 4,000 life points as opposed to 8,000. We kind of need our life points to be a little bit lower. Also, keep in mind, Kitragena is 0 attack right now. That's right, 0 attack. Let's go ahead and change that. We'll then use the effect of Dinomorphia Kitragena to be able to banish the Dinomorphia Frenzy, and now, or pay half our life points and banish the Frenzy, which puts us at 2,000, giving her 2,000 attack, but also allowing us to use Dinomorphia Frenzy yet again. We'll fusion summon by sending another monster from our deck to the graveyard. You can send another Diplos, as I'm not saying this card's useless, but you're seeing what I'm doing to it. And then we will send another Rexstorm. That's a lot of times what I like to do, to summon Rexstorm to our side of the field. So with one card, guys, we were able to get a Dinomorphia Kitragena, which allows us to be able to special summon a Dinomorphia monster from the graveyard to our side of the field. You also have a Rexstorm, which says you can make all of your opponent's monsters the attack of your life points. Currently, I have 2,000. Imagine if I had a card like, I don't know, Solemn Judgment and Solemn Strike here. So the thing how it goes is that, let's say if I activated both of these two cards, this would literally put me down at 500. This will put me down at 250. I can make all of my opponent's monsters 250, but more importantly, monsters with the attack of or at my life points or higher cannot activate their effects. That is literally a blowout. From there, on your next turn, you summon the Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, and then you synchro summon with these two monsters into your Psychic and Punisher, and you one punch man your opponent, as this guy has a bajillion attack because they're still at 8,000 and you're at 69 life points. And that is all that I have for today's video. Of course, if you want to see more amazing content, go ahead and check out these videos. One of them is actually another great budget meta deck. Of course, I hope you're having an amazing day, as I'll catch you on the next one.